My wife screamed, "This is your son, not mine." Then admitted she had a new man. So I took full custody and left her with nothing. I remember the evening we decided to try for a baby. Rachel sat across from me at our small kitchen table, a cup of tea cooling between her hands. We talked about colors for the nursery, how we would split nights, and names. She laughed at one I suggested and said she liked it. I was 34, and suddenly life felt wide open. We had married young by some standards, but we always planned to build a family. For years, she had been my partner in ordinary things: grocery runs, late-night talks, arguments about bills that ended with both of us apologizing. I thought we were on the same page. A child felt like the next chapter. The pregnancy went without drama. Friends sent gifts. Her parents called. We painted a wall in the spare room and picked up a secondhand crib. Every small choice felt like proof we were doing this together. When the baby arrived, I felt a joy I had only heard other people describe. Seeing him for the first time, the tiny hands, the soft breath, made me believe in the plan again. Rachel held him briefly, tears in her eyes, then placed him in my arms and said we had created something real. But the days that followed were not what I expected. Rachel slept in fits and moved through the house with a guarded look. She complained about the noise that never seemed loud until she mentioned it. She kept her phone face down and stepped outside to take calls. At first, I told myself she was overwhelmed. Exhaustion can make anyone distant. The first time she said the words that would echo for months. She was at the sink with an empty mug. "This was your plan, not mine," she said. "You wanted this baby, so you take care of him." Her voice was flat, like she had practiced the line. I answered gently, "This is our son. You're his mother. He needs both of us." She turned away, and the air between us shifted. After that, small things felt larger. She criticized how I folded the baby's blanket. She snapped when I tried to help with a bath. She refused to go to family visits, saying she needed rest. When I asked if she was okay, she bristled and said I was making too much of everything. I began to worry I was missing signs of a deeper struggle. There were nights I sat up with the baby and watched Rachel sleep in another room, thinking through every conversation we had ever had. I thought of the plans we made and the promises we whispered at night. I wanted to reach out, but every attempt at closeness met an annoyed look or a slammed door. I suggested counseling, a doctor, and support groups. Each time, she shut the idea down. "I'm fine," she would say without meeting my eyes. Her answers were short, the warmth between us thinning like the last light of evening. By the end of those first months, something in our home felt fragile. The sleeping baby was a trusting presence in a place that no longer felt safe in the same way. I kept notes to myself, small observations I would not forget. The baby's first smile, the time he reached for my finger, these moments kept me steady. I believed then that love and patience would be enough to bring Rachel back to us soon. Trapped? That was how she saw it. We had painted walls together, bought baby clothes together, and even laughed about how little sleep we would get once the baby arrived. None of it had been forced. Or at least, I thought it hadn't. Weeks went by, and the air in the house only grew heavier. Rachel drifted further away. She skipped dinners with my family, saying she didn't want to deal with questions. She barely touched our son except to pass him back to me. At night, she shut herself in the bedroom with her phone, the glow of the screen slipping through the crack under the door. She would laugh softly at something, a laugh I hadn't heard directed at me in months. When I knocked to ask if she was okay, she snapped, "Stop interrogating me. I need space." I wanted to believe it was exhaustion, maybe postpartum depression. I read articles at night while the baby slept against my chest. Everything I read said support, patience, and therapy could help. I suggested therapy more than once. She laughed bitterly. "You think I'm crazy? I'm fine. You're the one who can't handle a little stress." But it wasn't just stress. It was like watching a light dim slowly until the room was almost dark. One night, I was in the kitchen warming a bottle. Our son's cries filled the hallway, thin and desperate. Rachel walked in suddenly, her eyes sharp, her shoulders stiff. Without warning, she grabbed a mug off the counter and hurled it against the wall. The crash startled me, shards flying across the tile. "This is not my son," she screamed. "He's your son. I never wanted him." The words hit harder than the sound of the mug breaking. I froze in place, holding the bottle, while our baby cried louder in the other room. I wanted to argue, to tell her she was wrong, but no words came. I couldn't believe what I had just heard. Later, when the house was quiet again, I sat in the dark holding our son, listening to his steady breaths. I thought about how I had once believed Rachel was my anchor, my partner in every storm. But now she felt like a stranger living under the same roof, rejecting the very child we had once dreamed about together. And for the first time, I wondered if something far worse than exhaustion was happening. After that night, I couldn't ignore the signs anymore. Something deeper was going on, something I hadn't wanted to admit. Rachel's excuses started piling up. She told me she had joined a yoga class twice a week, but when I asked simple questions, the instructor's name, where it was held, she brushed me off. I noticed new charges on her credit card, dinners at places we'd never been, gas stations across town, clothing stores where she'd never shopped before. Then there was the perfume, a sweet, heavy scent that lingered when she left in the evenings. She never wore perfume for me anymore. I tried to push it out of my mind, but the little details kept stacking up. One afternoon, while folding laundry, I found a crumpled receipt tucked into the pocket of her jeans. It was from a fancy restaurant. Dinner for two. The date on the slip matched the night she told me she was too tired to go anywhere with me and the baby. My hands went cold holding that piece of paper. I stood there in the laundry room, staring at it, my son babbling softly from his play mat nearby. Deep down, I already knew the truth, but I wasn't ready to face it. A week later, I came home earlier than usual. I thought maybe surprising Rachel with takeout might remind her of what we used to have, even just a little. As I stepped inside, I heard her voice drifting down the hall. Soft, playful, a tone I hadn't heard from her in months. I followed the sound to our bedroom door, which was slightly ajar. She was on the phone, lying on the bed, giggling like a teenager. I said her name quietly. She jolted upright like she'd been caught stealing. Her face drained, then flushed with color. She scrambled to end the call, shoving her phone under the pillow like that would erase what I'd just seen. Who are you talking to? I asked, my voice steady but firm. For a moment, she stared at me, lips pressed tight, eyes darting like she was calculating what to say. The silence between us stretched so long I could hear the ticking clock in the kitchen. Then, finally, she lifted her chin, and the words that came next would split our marriage wide open. She looked me straight in the eye and said, "Fine. You want to know? I'm in love with someone else. His name is Chris. And yes, we've been seeing each other. What are you going to do about it?" For a moment, I couldn't even breathe. The woman I had built a life with, the mother of my son, was standing in front of me and saying this like it was nothing, like it was normal. My chest felt tight, but I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I didn't even cry. Instead, I looked at our son's empty crib and knew in that moment I had to find a way out. For him, if not for myself. Rachel, though, seemed almost proud of herself. She tossed her phone onto the nightstand and added, "Chris treats me the way you never did. He makes me feel alive. You and that baby are just weights holding me down." The words cut deep, but I forced myself to stay calm. "What about our son?" I asked quietly. She shrugged like it didn't matter. "You wanted him, remember? You take care of him. I don't have time for this mom stuff." That was it. The last thread holding us together snapped. I spent the night on the couch, watching my son sleep in his bassinet beside me. His tiny hand curled around my finger, and I knew right then that I couldn't keep him in this toxic environment. He deserved love, not rejection. Stability, not chaos. Rachel didn't come out of the bedroom until late the next morning. She walked past us without a word, grabbed her purse, and left the house like we were an inconvenience. And as the door closed behind her, I realized my marriage wasn't just broken, it was gone. The next step, I knew, would be the hardest decision of my life. But it was no longer about saving what we had. It was about protecting my son from a mother who had already walked away in every way that mattered. The morning after her confession, I called a lawyer. It felt surreal to even say the words out loud. Divorce, custody, evidence. But I knew this wasn't just about a broken marriage anymore. This was about shielding my son from a mother who had already made it clear she didn't want him. I gathered everything I had. The receipts, the late-night absences, even the times I had recorded her saying the baby wasn't hers. When I handed it over, the lawyer shook his head slowly. "This will be messy," he said, "but you've got a strong case." When Rachel was served the papers, she didn't look shocked or hurt. She actually smiled. "Good," she said. "Now I can live the life I want." At first, I braced myself for a fight. I thought maybe she'd drag me through court just to punish me. But she barely showed up to hearings. On the rare days she did, she walked in late, dressed for a night out, and holding Chris's hand like it was some kind of performance. My lawyer leaned over once and whispered, "She's making this easy for us." Easy wasn't the word I would have used. Sitting in that courtroom, watching the woman I once called my partner act like motherhood was a job she never applied for, was gutting. I thought back to the nights we stayed up planning baby names, the afternoons painting the nursery, the way she had once smiled at me like we were in this together. That woman felt like a ghost. The judge didn't take long to decide. Based on the evidence, I was granted primary custody. Rachel was given visitation rights, but she hardly used them. Some weekends, she never even showed up, sending vague texts about being busy. My son was too young to notice, but I did. Every missed visit was another reminder of how far she had gone. What broke me more than the divorce papers or the hearings wasn't losing Rachel. It was realizing my son might grow up asking why his mother wasn't around. And I would have to look him in the eye one day and give him an answer. Even then, part of me held on to a question I couldn't shake. How had the woman I loved turned into someone who could walk away so easily? Even after the court was done and the papers were signed, I couldn't shake the need for answers. How could Rachel turn her back on everything we built? On her own son? One evening, she stopped by the house to grab a few boxes of clothes she'd left behind. I waited until she was almost out the door, then asked quietly, "Why? Why throw away your marriage, your son, everything, for this?" She paused, hand on the doorknob, then turned and gave me a look I'll never forget. Because I deserve better than being stuck in some suburban prison. Chris gives me freedom. He gives me excitement. You just gave me responsibility. And with that, she walked out like it was nothing. Like our years together meant less than a night out with him. At first, I was furious. Then grief hit. But slowly, over the weeks that followed, those feelings turned into something else, pity. Because the freedom she chased was nothing more than a thrill. And thrills don't last. I found out months later, through a mutual friend, that Chris had dumped her. He wasn't interested in being tied down to a woman with a child she didn't even care for. Rachel had given up her marriage, her child, and her stability for someone who discarded her once the excitement wore off. When she realized Chris was gone, she tried to come back. She showed up at my door, asking to see our son. Her tone was softer, almost desperate. I let her in because I thought maybe he needed to know his mother. But when she reached for him, he clung to me instead, crying until I held him tight. He didn't recognize her. She hadn't been there long enough to be a part of his world. Rachel's face twisted with anger. "You turned him against me," she snapped before storming out. But she was wrong. I didn't turn him against her. She had done that all on her own by choosing herself every single time over him. That night, after putting my son to bed, I sat in the quiet house and realized something. The woman I married was gone. Whatever version of her had existed before, she wasn't coming back. And the only thing that mattered now was being the parent my son deserved. Life today looks nothing like the one I imagined when Rachel and I first talked about having a baby. Raising a child alone is harder than I could have ever pictured. There are long nights when he cries, and I'm the only one there to comfort him. There are mornings when I drag myself out of bed, exhausted, knowing I still have to give him my best. But every single night, when I tuck him in and he curls up against me, I know I made the right choice. I chose love over selfishness, stability over chaos, family over betrayal. Rachel, meanwhile, is still chasing something she can't seem to find. I hear things from mutual friends about how she bounces from one relationship to another, about how people whisper behind her back. They say she lost her husband, lost her child, lost her future, all for a man who walked away the moment the thrill wore off. And me? I don't carry bitterness anymore. At first, I was angry. Then I was heartbroken. But now, I just feel thankful. Because in losing her, I found the strength to be the father my son deserves. One day, when he's older, I'll tell him the truth. Not to turn him against his mother, but so he understands something important. Sometimes people choose themselves over love. And when they do, you don't beg them to stay. You let them go, and you build something better without them. Rachel once told me, "This was your plan, not mine." Maybe she was right. Maybe it was my plan. But I'll never regret it. Because no matter how much she walked away, I will never walk away from my son. He was never a mistake. He was never a burden. He is my reason to keep going. So here I am, a 34-year-old single dad, figuring it out one day at a time. And if I've learned anything, it's this. Sometimes the life you didn't plan ends up being the one that matters most. I appreciate you watching till the end. Hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more content.